Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the one and only Matt Skidmore Show. And we're joined here live today with a very special guest, Yenni Desroches, who is running for city council. And I want to pronounce this right, Worcester. Did I do that right? Worcester? No.
Nope.
Oh, you'll correct me, but
and Worcester.
okay. Worcester, Massachusetts.
Worcester. Like
Worcester.
W-U-H, Worcester, like you're stirring a pot.
Worcester.
But there's no H
okay.
in it when you're spelling it.
Worcester, Massachusetts. And for those of you who don't know Yenni, aren't familiar with her, I've known Yenni for a long time because Yenni, you actually used to be a big watcher of my Twitch streams. And for those who never have watched my Twitch streams, we have that's kind of like where the fun happens. Like YouTube is where like the serious stuff happens. Then when we just want to kick back, relax, and enjoy things, we head on over to Twitch. So I've got to know Yenni through that, and she's very cool. You have been a huge volunteer like over the past 24 months for Andrew Yang and his campaign. You were a big believer in him. So I guess to just start off, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you first get involved in politics? And I guess when did you realize like that the idea, I guess, of like, universal basic income and a human-centered economy and getting big money out of politics and universal healthcare, like when did you decide that that was the direction you wanted to go in with your politics?
So in terms of me getting into politics, it was, I only became active in politics when I first started volunteering for Yang. Previous to that, I was following stuff. But I always kind of wanted to get into politics. My father was on school board, and then Hamilton came out and I heard My Shot and room where it happened. And I'm like, I want to be in the room where it happens. But in 2019, I got involved with the Yang campaign. I was the regional organizer for New England. And I got tossed into that role right after I had a surgery that I almost didn't make it out of. And then another one the next day that I almost didn't make it out of. And that kind of changed my outlook on a lot of things. And I've been living by the, if not now, when. And I decided I'm not going to go for like committee and then school committee and then city council. No, I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to go for city council. I see the need, so I'm going to go for it. And at the time I was going to be going up against an incumbent. He decided to run at large, so I now have two opponents, one of whom's announced, one's not, and then there's a rumor of a potential fourth. But
yeah, when you said that you had like when you first right before you, I guess you first started volunteering for Yang, you had like a medical thing. Mm-hmm. Is that like an event that kind of shaped a lot of your views? Because I know it's something where I guess you see these stories in the news, right, about like people who go through like terrible, unexpected medical emergencies and suddenly they're bankrupt or in tremendous amounts of debt. Is that something that I guess maybe you kind of had a similar experience with? And
so,
like,
thankfully, we have really good insurance, but that would have literally been more than my house. I'm a owner-occupied landlord, so I've got 2 units, and I live in the third. And it would have been the bills for just one of the surgeries was more than my house. The other one was even higher than that, and then the hospital stay for 5 days after that in the cardiac unit was an additional ridiculous amount because I had a private room because it's all they had available. I'm very, very beneficial. It's very lucky that my husband has really good insurance, because without it, we would have had to go into medical bankruptcy because there was literally no way that amount of money could be paid out of anyone's pocket unless you're like a billionaire.
Yeah.
The costs in hospitals are a little crazy, but I also see it from the other side because my father's a chief medical officer. So I see why all of these things are being charged this much. And that's part of why I was like, Yang's healthcare thing makes sense. My father's a Republican, hates Democrats, hates all of the Medicare for all stuff. I showed him Yang's policies for healthcare, and he was like, yes. It was very funny because it was like we don't usually see eye to eye on politics, but
yeah, Yang had a way of doing that with people. But
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, it's definitely. I'm
it
fortunate
definitely
enough.
like changed things.
Yeah, I'm fortunate enough myself. Like, I haven't had like some situation where I've gone through that. But like, I mean, I see it myself. I remember like what made me really flip on like the healthcare issue, like because I used to lean more to the right on it as well, was hearing about like a friend of
Mhm.
mine who didn't want to go through like something as basic as just like seeing a therapist to get help with like struggling with like depression and stuff like that, just because he couldn't like afford it. It's like, man, like, is
Mhm.
that the society we want to live in? So I guess you mentioned
Yeah, my therapist is not covered by my insurance. So I have to do the whole rigmarole of she puts in the paperwork to get approved for out of network, and then I have to submit every visit, every visit that I have, every charge that I have to the insurance company. And then the insurance company maybe sends me a check. I've never seen one. Even
yeah,
though I hit my deductible and my out-of-pocket maximum by May every year. I've
yeah.
got Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a connective tissue disorder, and I'm perpetually in physical therapy, and that just eats up all that cost no matter what I do.
Yeah, I mean the cost of healthcare is insane, and I know that's like not for many people it's the number one issue. Um,
Yeah,
but
unfortunately, city council level, we don't have much control over
yeah,
healthcare
yeah.
stuff.
Well
We
that's
do
the
have
thing is
one of the places here in town, UMass, is one of the sites that's researching the COVID vaccines. I believe it's Moderna that they're working on.
yeah.
They're
That's kind
doing
of
good
like
work with that.
I guess like you that's what I kind of wanted to get into, I guess, is like the transition of, seeing this guy Yang and being like, okay, wow, I really agree with his policies. They're so good that even my dad, who thinks all liberals are insane, likes it. So what like or I guess what I should say is, at what point did you realize like because running, I mean, you can always have like a thought in the back of your mind, like, maybe one day
Mhm.
if I had, first of all, I guess, the free time, because it's such a huge commitment. But like at what point did you really think like, I want to run for city council, and this is something that I think I can be of help to my community.
So the initial I want to go for city council and trying to figure out what the different steps to get there would be, where I was going to go on to a commission and then school committee and then the council. That was 2016, 2017. Then in 2018, I was at a Chamber of Commerce event where our state senator, Harriet Chandler, was speaking, and I spoke to her and I explained that I was thinking about doing this, this, this. And she's like, you don't need to pay your dues, just go do it. Um, and it wasn't until like a year or so later, when I had the surgery issues, that I was like, yeah, I need to just do it. I wasn't sure whether or not I was going to run in district or at large at that point. And then in March, when COVID hit, my district counselor, Matt Wally, did not publish anything publicly telling people where COVID testing things were, talking about Worcester Together. Like, he's got an email list that I'm on that he could have sent out a note saying, hey, Worcester Together is doing great things. Go donate to them. They need help.
And
It's
was
an
he
organization. It's a consortium of organizations that was put together to help the community and has done amazing things with it. But
and
he
was
didn't
he
even do that bare minimum.
a Democrat or Republican?
Democrat. We have
Democrat.
one Republican on our city council. We've got 5 district seats, 5 at-large seats, and our mayor. And what's really, really strange is I've found myself matching up more with a lot of the issues that our Republican city councilor is pushing in terms of our parks and related to our schools, than I am with some of the more Democratic city councilors. But it's Massachusetts, so Republicans here would be Democrats in the South. It's it's a Massachusetts doesn't really have like the same kind of Republican sector.
Yeah, no.
It's a lot smaller.
I know the governor there is Charlie Baker, and he's a Republican, but he was like, I don't even
we
think
always
he
have
voted for
Republican
Trump.
governors. I don't understand.
Yeah, well, I'm in Maryland, and we have a Republican governor, and we're super Democrat too. So it's interesting.
Why is my camera?
Camera's working?
Let's try that again.
No, camera's
Yeah,
not
no,
working.
it was just like flashing. It was doing slight things. I'm good.
It seems to be fine. Seems to be fine on my
Cool.
my end. I want to ask you about like what are the problems that you identify in Worcester? Trying to pronounce that right, because I know American cities like large American cities across the country, like LA and New York City and San Francisco, they're facing a lot of similar problems right now, like really high unemployment. COVID has been like very devastating to inner city areas where the population density is so much higher. How is it in kind of more of a medium-sized city like Worcester? Are you seeing like the same problems that you see in even cities near you, like Boston?
Yeah, Boston's doing a different job than we are with it. So they're doing better on some things, worse on other things. I think the way that they treated being able to have restaurants open during the summer by closing streets, we followed behind them on that, but they did a better job of it, I think. But in terms of COVID testing and getting vaccines out to people, the people who are signing up to get vaccines, it's definitely hitting that racial divide of people who are in the BIPOC communities and the lower income areas are not getting it. They're not getting tested as much because the sites that are available had lines literally around the block. It gets cold here. It's Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So it was difficult for people to get tests for a while. There wasn't necessarily enough sites. We've kind of worked on that. Obviously, everywhere had problems early on. No one knew what to do, but I think we've worked a lot of it out. It's going pretty well. We've got a new super site that's opened at Worcester State University, which is in my district. They're doing about 1,000 vaccines a day. The state gives the city of Worcester 940 vaccines a week, I believe it is, or it might be a day. And they give those out through the senior center. And we've got the Walgreens and CVS's doing them. So the reach is happening. And there's a group that just kind of got put together to help figure out ways to get people who are in the more marginalized communities to take the vaccine and how to get it to them and all of that stuff. Yeah. One of the major problems is that our bus lines don't go to the places that need them.
Where the vaccines are. That's a problem.
To go from the more marginalized areas of the city to our super site, walking, it might take you 45 minutes to an hour, which in Worcester during the winter, when we have snowstorm after snowstorm after snowstorm after ice storm, slush storm, ice again, it's been a nightmare for getting around. But our bus system goes from downtown out and then back to downtown. There's nothing going around the city. So we don't have the interconnectivity between the lines. So it can take 2 to 3 hours to get somewhere that could be a 20-minute walk if you just went angled across the city, because it has to go all the way down to the hub and then all the way back out again.
Sounds a little inefficient.
Super large city. We're only like, I think it's like 36 square miles, but
yeah. I mean, definitely. Like, what's the population? Isn't it like 200,000 or so?
I think
Maybe
that's about it, in the 200,000 range. The estimates based on census related stuff is 180,000, but obviously that's 10 years out of date, and algorithms to figure all that out only go so well. We had a major boom in development recently, so our population has definitely gone up at a faster rate than those algorithms are probably calculating for. We'll find out once the census stuff comes out.
Yeah, you mentioned the racial inequities that we've seen in the distribution of the vaccine, and I think sometimes we don't even realize how bad they actually are because not only are the proportion of the population that is, African American or Latino uh, getting
Mhm.
the vaccine in less of a proportion to their population. COVID originally affected these same groups. In a higher proportion than
Mhm.
their white counterparts. So it's like they're not they got hit they got hit harder on the front end with the actual all the infections, and now they're getting hit again on the back end where they're not even able to get the protection, the cure, if you want to call it the
Mhm.
cure. Paget would not
I
like
call
that if
it an
she were watching this.
inoculation. I
The
feel like
inoculation.
vaccine is giving people a little bit too much security.
Yeah.
It's like a
I'm not a
security
doctor.
blanket
I'm not a
saying, I got the
doctor, and
vaccine, but
I
it
hate
doesn't actually
talking about
stop
the
people from
vaccine.
getting, but it doesn't stop people from being a carrier.
I
I was
hate
just
talking about the
talking with my
vaccine.
father about it.
Too controversial,
He runs two,
especially on YouTube.
yeah. Well, he
Yeah.
runs my father runs two hospitals near New York City and New Jersey. So he saw everything that happened during COVID. So I
Yeah.
heard a lot behind the scenes stuff of everything that was going on. And he just gave a presentation that I watched last week about how the vaccine is affecting people in terms of how effective is it, what does it affect, and how does it help things. And people can still be carriers of it without being symptomatic and have had the vaccine.
Yeah.
We're still not sure what the long-term efficacy of or effectiveness of the vaccine is going to be because they've only been in trials for 9 months. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's going to be an interesting ride over the next year.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely is. I guess the part I wanted to get into is less so about the vaccine itself, but how exactly, if you were in city council, you would work to try to correct some of those disparities. You mentioned the bus lines, so that's definitely something. But is there anything else that you have in mind? Like, I know in some cities they're doing like education programs. Like, actually, I know you said before we got started that you haven't been following Andrew's campaign too closely, but he's actually having his volunteers now like call people directly just to give them information about the vaccine.
Mm.
Uh,
Mhm.
so, like, what
Yeah.
plans in terms of trying to correct some of those disparities do you have in mind?
Um, I'm kind of leaving it up to the communities that are already solving that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a number of organizations that are coming together to solve that as part of both Worcester Together, things that have come up at council meetings over the past few weeks that are addressing it in terms of forming basically an
So
organizing group to handle a lot
you were
of it.
just
So it's
so you would
not I'm letting the people who know more about it do their thing.
yeah. So I'd say you would just want to your goal would just be to support and enhance the work of the people who are already trying to solve the issue.
Exactly.
Yeah. On a separate topic, well, not separate, but slightly related topic, with COVID. AC has a question. He wants to know how you feel. This is a very controversial one, depending where you are. But how do you? Well,
Yeah.
maybe it's not controversial in Massachusetts. How do you feel about lockdowns? I guess I mean you can go over all the different areas. I
So
mean, schools, restaurants. There's a lot to discuss there in
yeah.
terms of how you break it down.
So I am a former small business owner. I owned Next Level Pet Care, dog walking and pet sitting business, and I had to close in March. And I've closed permanently. So I have personally felt that like is my business going to be able to survive this? And it's not because all of my people are now working from home. So the like two clients that I had that were still needing services, I gave them to my employee who started up his own business. I'm immune compromised. He's not, so he can continue going out there. And I feel like there's a lot of businesses that were put in that situation where they had to figure out that answer for themselves. And it is a very depressing conversation to have with yourself. So I see from the business side of things, yes, we want everything to open back up again. But if we close and have everything closed for a while and really get everything under control, then everything can open back up again quickly, rather than this like slow repeating curve that we keep having. They're saying that in the spring, we're probably going to see another spike again because people are going to be going outside their homes again. And people are going to be getting more comfortable because the vaccine's out. And we'll probably see another spike then. But that's going to start us again on that roller coaster that we've been seeing. And I think that Baker did us a disservice by not stepping us back in terms of reopening. We had different stages. We've gone through the different stages, but he never stepped us back, even in January and early February when we were having the massive spike. We just got back down to our last spring's high. We should have been shut down more than we were, because if it was bad enough then that we needed to stop being out and going places, when there's more cases and more deaths happening, we should have been home as well. I think a lot of the need to reopen comes from people needing to be able to go to work, needing to be able to make money. But if those companies are not having people buy stuff because they don't have money, they're going to go under, which means less jobs. It's a very vicious cycle that, unfortunately, the only thing that is really going to stop that cycle is if we can get a pandemic UBI.
I mean, well, that's what I was about to say. Is unfortunately when the federal government is doing the least, like it's just you have a global pandemic going on that's now killed 500,000 people. There's just it doesn't leave too many options. I know, like I really feel for people out there like who just still their businesses have been shut down now for almost a year, and you wish there was something that could be done, but I mean, it's the federal government, in my opinion, has to get their act together.
We've got a tabletop board gaming bar that's in Arlington that me and my husband would go to, and they're closed. They have no idea when they're going to be able to open back up again because they surround themselves by people sitting at a table playing games for a while. Like, you can play all sorts of different board games there. And that's not going to be reopening anytime soon. Regular restaurants, yes. Bars, maybe. Schools, I think it's a touchy subject because teachers want to get back in the classroom. Students want to get back in the classroom. From a mental health perspective, we need to get students back in the classroom. But if we're not doing it in a safe way by making sure that there's enough vaccines for the teachers, and I mean, right now, the teachers union is actually going through a whole contract negotiation with the city. And there's, I don't remember if it was, I think it was this past Thursday that they had an outdoor thing about it. That unfortunately, as someone who's COVID risk, I don't go outside. But the schools need to reopen in a way that makes sense. And one of the things that I have been strongly in support of is bringing people back into the schools, the paraprofessionals and specialists who work with special needs students, because they are the ones that are hurting the most by not having in-person services. Things like speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy. Those things are super necessary for those students' continued success, and it's setting them back further and further every week and month that they are not getting those services in person. Some school districts are able to bring people into the home and send people to their homes to do those kinds of things, but a lot of districts can't. Worcester does not have anywhere near enough staff on their special needs teams to handle that. You need to bring the students back in-house, even if it's just they come in for that service and then leave again. Which that's easy first step open, because you can move people between different classrooms and clean them in between and do all of that. But you can't do that if the schools don't have proper ventilation systems. And some of our schools' ventilation systems haven't been updated in decades. It's costing, I think it's about $15 million to redo our ventilation systems in our schools to meet COVID needs. And then it's just slowly stepping it up and up and up until back to full capacity all of the time. It's not something that we can just rush in and say, yes, everyone's back. That's irresponsible in my view. And then I saw someone commented that you tossed it up on screen about the restaurant's 25% capacity. I think it entirely depends on the building. I think it needs to not be this like, you have this percentage of capacity, because there are some buildings who, capacity wise, they pack in tables in there. And there are other restaurants whose official capacity is not as high because they don't put as many tables in there. They have larger tables further separated apart. But the 25% capacity in terms of how many people can be in a space goes based on fire code. So the people who have that less amount of tables are not seeing as much benefit to that 25% as the people who literally jam tables in as close as they can in pre-COVID. So it having it as a blanket thing makes sense because you can't micromanage it, but it's definitely something that needs to be balanced. I don't know what our percentage is at right now. I'm pretty sure it's at 25%. But as long as places have like the plexiglass between booths and things like that, I think it's safe. It's not proven to be a source that is significant. I think we could probably go up to 50%.
Yeah, I actually really like your answer because I think that's what a lot of people are looking for. People know, I think in general, hopefully most people know that the virus is a real threat. It's dangerous, but at the same time, people they want flexibility, and they don't like these overarching policies that, you know, one size fits all. People want like an individualized approach. And you mentioned that it is hard because you can't like micromanage that, but just I think to have somebody in charge who knows in the back of their mind like their thing about I think like people just want to know like. I think like if I have a business myself, right? And luckily it's mostly online because we do online sales. But like I know that if I was shut down right now, like I would want my whoever was running things, my leader, to be focused, number one, on how can you get my business open back up as quickly as possible. Mm-hmm. And I feel like from your answer there, that's kind of like the gist I get from you. It's hard because you gotta balance the safety. Yeah, it's like that's exactly it. You gotta just do it responsibly. Here's a good question for Max. You mentioned you disagreed with Charlie Baker on his handling of the lockdowns. What do you think of Charlie Baker? You already answered the question. You would not vote to re-elect him as Massachusetts governor.
No,
why is that? Why?
There are a wide variety of reasons outside of COVID that I don't like him. Things that he does with the prison system, things that he does with the just all of the different departments. The fact that he tried to pocket veto our climate bill, like that just. Right there, just puts a no from me. But I mean, there's so many.
For those who I'm not familiar, I don't mean to cut you off, but since I'm not familiar, what was the climate bill? What was in it, and what was his argument? Like,
he just didn't want to do it. It's a common sense progress thing that doesn't go anywhere near as far, anywhere near as fast as we need to go. But it's baby steps. Let's get some baby steps in here. And he wanted to pocket veto it, which is at the end of the legislative period, if he hasn't signed it or vetoed it, it's a pocket veto, meaning it's just sitting there. He hasn't done anything with it, so the legislature can't do the supermajority vote.
Yeah.
They ended up, I believe it did end up going to the supermajority vote. Because they had passed it with a supermajority in the first place. But it's I don't remember the details of it, to be honest. That was a couple of weeks ago, and the world is moving very quickly lately.
Darla says, Matt, with the cooperative overlapping. Do you know what cooperative overlapping is? I learned about it today.
No.
Apparently, it's what Jews do when they're interrupting people. It's actually not interrupting. We're just cooperatively overlapping. And I reacted. I was like, "Wow!" And I thought I was just an asshole.
I think that's the thing with Italians too.
Yeah,
I'm Southern Italian, and we all do that.
Yeah, I cut you off a little bit mid-answer, but you were going besides just the climate issue. I get, yeah. I mean, if it has a super majority that's supporting it, and he's just letting it sit there, that definitely seems bad. Like, what else besides that and the lockdown things do you not see eye to eye with Baker?
It's hard to enumerate. It's like
there's got to be more.
Everything I have problems with him on. He's nowhere near the progressive person that we need as our governor. He's kind of in this weird. He's a Massachusetts Republican. I mean, we had Romney, who created Romney Care, which became Obamacare. So Romney is a Republican. That's kind of where our governors end up sitting, is this like weird amalgamation of Dino and Rhino, Democrat or Republican in name only. There's a lot of little things that go into it. But just overall, his policy stances on pretty much everything don't align with what I would want to see. The person that I voted for the Democratic primary against him last cycle, Bob Massey, had like an amazing list of things that he did. So did Gonzalez ran against him. I don't think he ran a strong enough campaign, and that's why he lost. In Massachusetts, for some reason, we really like Republican governors.
Yeah. It's the Northeast states have a habit of doing that. I mean, look at New York City. Mm-hmm. They had Giuliani. AC, he asked another question earlier. It's on a bit of a different topic. I guess it would fall under public safety.
Okay.
Yeah, here it is. He wants to know, what is your stance on the Second Amendment? And I know, like, from a city council perspective, you can't really, it's not like the city council is deciding how the Second Amendment works or whatever, but there's definitely, like, different things that localities can do in terms of gun crime. I guess, what is your general stance, or just guns in general?
So
what is your general stances on it?
A big jump. We're seeing a big jump in gun crime in Worcester right now. I don't think there's been a day without a shooting or gun-related arrest in the last 3 or 4 weeks, which is abnormal for Worcester. We don't usually quite have quite this much activity. We are the second largest city in New England. We've got gangs. There's a gang war going on. We understand that there's going to be gun violence issues. We're a city, but we need to do more to teach people gun safety. I feel like the way that we currently do licensing needs to be adapted for people who just want to own a gun and don't end up doing any learning around it and just own it. Because people can have a car and they drive it and it can kill people. We go through classes and you have to take tests. And we have some of that here, but I think that it could be strengthened. I also think that we need to take a look at who is able to get guns. The issue of there are a lot of people who buy guns and don't have a firearm license to carry. In most states, that's a license to concealed carry, not just own a gun. You don't necessarily need a license to have a gun in your building if you don't get caught, or if you don't it's there's also the whole gun show thing, loopholes where people can buy and sell things through private sales that don't need to be tracked necessarily unless you sell a certain number of guns per year. And I think all of that needs to be tracked and monitored. But at the same time, gun ownership is a thing. We have a right to have our guns. I'm very pro Second Amendment. It just needs to be done in a responsible way that is the same across all of the states, because you shouldn't be able to say get a PO box in another state and not have to worry about a license because you're registered with it there. It's in such a globalized world, we need to have standardization of a lot of our laws across state lines, and gun control is one of them.
Yeah.
Massachusetts does a pretty good job.
Yeah. You mentioned the rising gun crime, and I know that's like we talked about earlier how COVID. Well, obviously COVID has increased unemployment, but I think like one of the side effects as well has been the increase in crime, which is related to unemployment, in my opinion. So I guess like I mean, you really could go any direction with this, because there's so many ways, in my opinion, that you can try to, I just think like it's mental health, it's a treatment for like addiction. There's a lot of different things that go into public safety and making sure crime is low and keeping people safe. I guess like, what are your plans in that regard? You go a lot of different directions with this question.
Yeah, so one of the major things that is a problem in Worcester is I was trying to find a new psychiatrist, and it took me 4 months, and I've got good insurance. But my previous person changed insurances and didn't take me anymore. And it took me 4 months to find a new one. And in the meantime, they didn't want to continue my meds at the old place because they couldn't see me to check up on me. So I had to get my primary care to fill the meds in the meantime while I was finding someone. It was a nightmare. We don't have enough people in those professions, and we need to do more to get people to go into those professions. And I think a lot of that is having them in schools so that people see the value in that job. Right now, there's a discussion to get rid of the police officers in schools. The city manager is bringing it up on the city council meeting tomorrow night. The removal of one school resource officer will enable us to have 2 mental health professionals in the schools. That's the budget trade-off there. And it's far more responsible of us to have those people who are mental health professionals, especially when kids start going back after COVID, because there's going to be all sorts of problems with people not knowing how to interact in person with others, especially people who are kindergarten, first grade, second grade, who have not been in a classroom.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of mental health problems that we're going to need to solve with that. And a lot of that also, if the student wants to see someone, they can go and see someone. There should be someone there to see without parents having to necessarily even know about it. But that also removes the stigma so that parents feel like they can go see someone. Because if their kid's able to see someone, the stigma of seeing mental health professionals needs to go away, because everyone needs it at some point in their life. Whether that's due to grief, due to trauma, due to losing a job, losing gotten a car accident and doesn't know how to cope with the fact that they can't drive through that intersection anymore. There's so many different things that you can go to a mental health professional for and get help with. That it's a really bad situation that we've placed ourselves in because we have so few mental health professionals. Bobby, that's exactly right. We have seen a significant rise in that, and it's only increasing further. the suicide and overdoses. It's going to get worse before it gets better. The way we treat people with addictions needs to majorly change. I am all for safe injection sites. I am all for making sure that there's affordable housing and assistive housing and homeless shelters that allow people to still have that addiction and not have to go cold turkey to be able to have a place to sleep. And there's a project that's going to be happening with micro units here in Worcester. They're going to be opening up 25 micro units. Woo. That's going to be such an impact. Not really. But it's a great first step into getting more of those kinds of buildings. And we need to do better by the people that have the least.
Yeah.
The people who are stuck in those low situations by no fault of their own. They were just dealt a shit hand. And as much as I was dealt a shit hand with my health, I have a lot else going for me. I am from a upper class white family from just north of New York City. I was born into privilege, raised in privilege, and I understand that. And I actively ask people who are not, that I'm friends with, that are not of that level of privilege, call me on it. I want to be called on it. I need to be called on it. And we need to get comfortable with being called on it. And educated on different things. And I think that that's a major issue with our current city council. When they get called on things that, like, oh, that's racist. You're calling everything racist. Like, no, you're literally putting services not in racially diverse areas. How is that not racist? But the suicide side of things and the mental health and the overdosing all ties together to financial distress. Not everyone has it from financial distress, but that is a big contributor to not being able to pull yourself up out of those kinds of situations without having mental health support and financial support and being taught how to navigate a system. I was having a conversation with someone in Pennsylvania. I don't know if she wants her name mentioned on these kinds of things, but she has had a lot of difficulty getting her information into the programs that she's supposed to be on, like Medicare, Medicaid, and food stamps and all those things, because she doesn't have a car, so she can't get to the offices to pick up the paperwork and then go to another office and deliver the paperwork. COVID has enabled them to put it all online, so she's able to actually do it all without having to pay an arm and a leg for a lift to cart her from place to place. So there's like a financial barrier for people to even get those services. And we need to do as much as we can to remove that barrier, both from a psychological perspective and a physical and financial perspective.
Yeah, 100%.
The people who have the least could not have to prove that they have nothing.
Yeah. One other side effect, or not a side effect, but effect of COVID, besides unemployment and crime, is the effect that COVID has had on the budgets of many cities. What is like the budgetary situation there in Worcester? And I guess how, like, because you have a lot of great ideas. And I think like a lot of people, when they run for office, like just in general, like everybody, a lot of people have really great ideas. But I always wonder how exactly are you going to get this implemented, like in terms of like I get funding and things like that. So I guess like, do you have any creative ways to try to get the revenue up for the city, or is it like in terms of trying to create more money? Is it like reappropriating current funding that perhaps is being wasted, or like it's just not the waste being spent on things that aren't priorities? How do you see that?
Yeah, there's definitely programs that are not as functional as they need to be. They're not addressing the problems they need to be addressing. They're inefficient. There's simple things that tie back into my love of data. When a person in our community reports that their sidewalk needs to be fixed, they send that to the Department of Public Works. If the Department of Public Works doesn't respond, usually they'll contact their city councilor. The city councilor puts it on the agenda, it gets voted on and whatnot, and then it goes into the ether, and we have no idea when or where anything's going to get fixed. When that person wants to find out the progress on it, they contact their city councilor. The city councilor has to contact the department. The department has to then spend their time and get back to the city councilor on it. And the city councilor has to go and talk to the constituent again. Where we could just have a simple system that tracks it all publicly that says this sidewalk's been reported and this is the progress on it. But the reason the city doesn't necessarily want to do that kind of thing, on the city council agenda tomorrow night, there's they're going through all of the different sidewalk projects. There's a whole spreadsheet that is not selectable. It's literally like a photocopy in a PDF, which, yay, screen readers can't do that. But there's one item on there from 1997. I'm like,
wow.
I was 9. Why is there an item from when I was 9 still needing to be repaired?
I'll tell you how they do it. We're in the county, so we don't have like ours isn't done by the city, it's done by the county, and it's very simple. We have like a website, and you like go on and you like submit a report. There's like a map that shows where all the recent, so you can see everybody's, and like it's yeah. So that's, I mean, that's definitely something that, you know, a process that needs.
We just don't have them.
Yeah, there's just things need to be made.
We just replaced our financial management system. The financial management system and budget software that we were using was programmed by people who worked for the city in a language that is no longer used or taught to anyone. And they both retired. So the city had to scramble to find a new program instead of having, you know, adapted to modern times and use something that was, I don't know, maybe QuickBooks like, instead of something that's hard coded by some programmers that are headed towards retirement. You should replace this sooner rather than later. And it took until they were retiring for the city to go, oh, we need to fix that. There's a lot of those kinds of things where the technology is just not in place here in Worcester. We don't have, there's a lot of efficiency issues that would give back time to work on more projects, to work on more things, to make sure that the staff of the city is being as efficient as they can be because they're given the tools to do the job right. And a lot of that ties to technology usage, and that's a huge thing for my campaign. Technology and data and accessibility are things that I'm very focused on. I've been talking about automation for 10 plus years, talking about UBI for 10 plus years. I'll talk about them till I'm blue in the face until they happen. It'd be really nice. Well, not automation. Automation is going to be causing problems, but it's nice on its own too, because it increases productivity things, it changes things. It's not a it's not a process that's going to be stopped, but the way that the city is handling current issues is going, what's the problem right now and how do we fix it right now? Rather than saying, what's the problem right now and how is it going to change in the next 5 to 10 years? And what solution do we have that's going to still fix it in 5 to 10 years? There's issues with that for me with the Green Worcester plan. It doesn't go far enough, fast enough. There's a counter proposal from Sunrise Worcester that they even have had to basically put together a thing that they think could pass. Instead of what we know of as 10 years, we need to have divested of most of the fossil fuels. We have a solar field here in Worcester that the city moved all of our electric distribution or generation over to. Anyone who doesn't have their own generator company, I'm blanking on the term, because there's the distributor, which is National Grid, and then there's the energy provider that does the sourcing of it. Anyway, the city took over all of the ones that haven't self-selected a different company, and unfortunately, a lot of those companies are pretty scammy. They don't let you out of contracts and things like that. But the price went down for most people, and then they have I believe it's a 30% renewable and a 100% renewable that you can opt into. So why we're not building on those kinds of things in a way that makes sense, in a fast sense of things, it doesn't. I understand there's budget concerns with all of it. Financial planning into all of this is a huge factor in terms of what we can actually afford to do. But the question is not being asked, what can we not afford to not do?
Yeah.
If we
I think too.
if we let the park here go out unmaintained, in 10 years, it's going to take a lot more to fix it than if it had been maintained all along. That kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, what I was going to say is, I think like it's about people, especially now when I mean, it's an issue in cities all across the country facing very tight budget shortfalls. You have to get people. Government needs to get creative. The problem is government tends to be very bureaucratic and slow and uncreative and not very adaptive to change. So I like the fact that you seem like somebody who would go in there with a plan to actually not just try to but actually make like real concrete differences, so that we aren't talking about these same issues now that we were talking about 10 years ago, like 10 years in the future from now.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, 10 years ago we were talking about a 15 minimum wage.
Yeah,
and we're not going to hit that here in Massachusetts. Years from now.
At some point, I think about like at some point UBI, like I'd like to, instead of being like, hey, let's get UBI, I'd be like, hey, how nice is that UBI you got? No, but for those who are interested in getting involved to help out your campaign, and I know that I'm personally really excited to support you, Yenni, because you just you're a really great person, and I know I think that you'll be doing a great job in the city council. How can people get involved and help? And because I know I'm on your website right now. It says
so my website's yenniforcouncil.com. If you go there, there's a button to volunteer, a button to donate. The donations right now, I'm collecting, I have a goal of $5,542 to get my first set of mailers out. I'm doing a listening tour. I'm going to be inviting people from the community to come talk to me. Is that the cost of the mailers? That's the cost of the mailers, getting them printed and postage and that kind of stuff, yeah.
I like it. I like the exact amount.
So I don't want to do the rounding, because it always seems like, well, what is that being spent on? Because that seems suspicious because it's rounded. I'm like, nope, that's the amount I need. So I've done a lot of analysis of all of the different things that I need to raise money for. Overall, I'm going to need about $35,000 for the whole campaign. I am facing a preliminary election in September. So that has gotten condensed. Right now, I'm needing to about $150 to $175 a day, which I'm not hitting. So any donations, especially reoccurring ones, even if they're small, help so much. If you sent $15 to a state level candidate or a federal level candidate, it's a little bit of a drop in the bucket. For me, that $15 sends a mailer to 6 people. And that has the potential of me getting 6 more votes. And in a race that is so small, we have a 23% turnout, and my win number is around 3,500 people. I only have to convince that many people to vote for me in the general election based on historic numbers to win the election. So that $15 goes a lot farther in terms of percentage of what I need to do. So if you can donate to me, I would super duper appreciate that. That would be amazingly helpful. If you can't, please like and share my stuff on Facebook and Twitter.
Yeah,
And
make
then
sure you
if
guys
you've got the
follow
time, the
Yenni
skills
on
that you want to
Twitter.
do some volunteering. Yep. It's Yenni Desroches on Twitter, and my Facebook page is facebook.com/vote-Yenni. And the major thing that I'm looking for super immediately is help with doing phone banks, as well as doing all of the organizing side of campaigning. So if you don't like phone banks, I still have stuff for you to do. I've got plenty of stuff. I need people to do data entry. If you've got 15, 20 minutes a week and you want to go into a file and grab a image that I took of 6 business cards and enter them into a spreadsheet for me, that is super helpful. Even that little bit of a thing can be really, really helpful for small campaigns because I don't have staff.
Yeah, I
won't
would
be
love
hiring staff, most likely.
Yeah, and I mean, it's compared to how much you've done for the Yang Gang, because I know like you were at one point like in meetings for like 15 hours a day on these like Zoom calls trying to get us set up after the campaign ended, the presidential campaign, and trying to keep the movement is still alive.
There were a couple weeks where I did 80 hours.
Yeah.
There was a couple 80-hour weeks during the campaign.
The way I see it, the
last weekend in Worcester, I don't think I slept.
Yeah, I mean, what I was going to say is
the way I see it, like from Thursday through the election. Oof.
The least the Yang Gang could do is.
Sorry, I think we were having a delay issue.
Yeah, we're cooperatively interlapping. But what I was going to say is.
Yeah.
I think
communication.
Like the least that we could do as the Yang Gang to give back for all your time that you gave us is to support you in your mission to try to improve the lives of the people in your city, because that's what it's all about. That's what politics. That's what we're in this for. We're trying to help people. We're trying to make lives better for people, and I'm really excited to support your campaign. So thank you for coming on.
That goal that I mentioned, 5,542. I'm only $500 in on that goal, and I've been pushing that goal out there for about 2 weeks now. Please donate. I really need the help. I need to get these mailers out because I can't go door to door.
I'm gonna leave a donation right after we call it a stream here. So hopefully that'll help us get started, and a few more will chip in. But I appreciate you coming on, Yenni.
And then just in terms of a slight other plug, I'm also one of the co-founders of Humanity First Movement. We've got our election next Saturday for a new board, but all of the things that they're doing tied in with Income Movement, which is tied in with Mayors for a Guaranteed Income. There's a lot of fantastic work that they're doing. Bailoutthepeople.com has a lot of those links and information, so go check that out too.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate yeah. I really appreciate you coming on, Yenni, and telling us about your campaign and telling us how we can get involved. I'll say again, I'm really excited. So either way.
And the first phone banks are starting March 8th. And then I've got a fundraiser coming up on Thursday doing pet first aid and CPR. We're doing a overview of what that is and how to make sure that your pets stay safe. And then on the following Saturday, on the 6th, I am doing a tea brewing and mindfulness. If you register by the 27th, you'll be getting 2 tea samples in the mail to brew on the call. So I would love to have folks at those. On my website, yenniforcouncil.com. There's all sorts of information on there. We've got my top 3 sectors with 3 policies each. I've got the events on there, a whole schedule of events, and I've got I have on there also the form to volunteer. I have the ability to have people book a meeting with me. You just click on the button, kind of like Calendly. It's all built into the same systems, which is fantastic. I love it. So yeah, and I saw something about where do I get the time. I don't have a job because I closed my business in March. But even before that, I don't
I'll
sleep.
do it.
I'm a gamer.
Well, that's how we got to know each other, Yenni. Because I don't sleep either, and you joined my Twitch stream at 1 a.m. We'd be ranting about who knows what the hell going on like last spring. So fun times, and
yeah. And
here
Corey,
we are.
Thank you so much. You're fantastic. Corey is one of my super vols doing fundraising stuff for me. Thank you, Corey.
Quick plug before for myself before we call it. Darla says, miss these interviews. That's good and bad, Darla, because it means you like the interviews, but it's bad because it implies that I haven't been doing them as much. But don't worry, we can solve that right now, because this Sunday, I think at 1:30, I'm going to be interviewing another Yang Gang candidate for city council. You might know her, Yenni. I'm having a mind blank. Badrun Khan. She's running for city council in New York City. And she ran against AOC in the primary in June. Didn't do as well as she had hoped. But when you're running against AOC, it's pretty hard to really do much there. But it's another opportunity, I think, to get somebody who I've interviewed her on the channel before. Another person like you, Yenni, who really knows her stuff and cares about people, and get them into government. So thank you, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you next time.